The first time I trusted the Alpha King, I died before the moon left the sky. Ira had thought the worst thing about the moon ball would be pretending she did not feel him. She had been wrong. Beneath the silver chandeliers of the royal hall, hundreds of nobles waited for the Moon Registry to declare the bonds destiny had chosen for them, while Ira stood among the lowest-ranking Omegas with moonroot crushed beneath the cuff of her pale sage dress. Its bitter scent clung to her skin, masking the strange warmth burning beneath her left wrist. She kept that wrist hidden. She kept her breathing steady. Most importantly, she did not look at King Valeric. Everyone else did. He stood above the ballroom in black royal armor, a heavy fur mantle across his broad shoulders and a crimson cloak falling behind him like spilled wine. His long black hair framed a face too sharp to be called gentle, and the sword at his side reminded everyone that the man wearing the crown had won it before he had inherited it. When the Moon Registry passed over Ira without reacting, relief nearly weakened her knees. It worked. To the court, she was exactly what she appeared to be, an insignificant Omega with no remarkable bloodline and no bond worth announcing. Then Valeric turned his head. His gaze found her across the entire hall. Ira's breath stopped. Something fierce moved behind his expression, gone so quickly she almost believed she had imagined it. She lowered her eyes and disappeared into the crowd. She should have left the palace that night. Instead, when Valeric's guards questioned her 2 days later about irregularities in her registry, Ira chose to lie again. She told them her mother had died without records. She told them she knew nothing about Moon Temple markings. She told Valeric, when he summoned her personally, that whatever he believed he had sensed at the ball had been a mistake. He watched her for a long moment. "You are hiding something." Ira's heart hammered, but she answered softly, "Everyone hides something from a king." That should have frightened him away. Instead, it made him investigate. And someone else noticed. A royal moon seal was discovered among Ira's belongings 3 nights later. She had never touched it. She said so. Chancellor Corvin presented the evidence. Moon Priestess Morgana spoke of treason. Valeric stood before his throne while Ira waited for him to look at her and see something stronger than accusation. For one foolish heartbeat, she believed he would. Instead, his jaw tightened. Hold her until the moon trial. He did not condemn her. He did not need to. The locked chamber beneath the palace was enough. Morgana came after midnight carrying a ceremonial moon blade and wearing the serene expression Ira had once mistaken for kindness. "Show me the mark," the priestess whispered. Ira backed away, covering her wrist. Suddenly every missing record, every warning her mother had given her, every year spent hiding beneath ordinary Omega clothes seemed to narrow into one choice. Reveal what the moon had placed in her blood, or protect it. No, Morgana's smile vanished. Then your secret dies with you. Ira remembered cold stone beneath her hands. She remembered the moon blade flashing silver. She remembered refusing to speak even when fear stole the strength from her legs. There was no glorious battle, no heroic rescue, only the terrible realization that she had trusted the wrong people to give her time. Somewhere beyond the locked door came a roar that shook dust from the ceiling. Valeric. Too late. The door opened as Ira's strength finally failed. She saw him rushing toward her, his face stripped of every trace of royal control. His wolf's grief filled the chamber before his voice did. Ira wanted to ask why he looked devastated when he had never trusted her enough to choose her. She never found the breath. The last thing she saw was the Alpha King dropping to his knees. Then darkness took everything. Ira opened her eyes with a violent gasp. Warm sunlight covered her small bedroom. There was no stone floor. No moon blade. No locked chamber. Her hands flew to herself, searching for an injury that was not there. Her heartbeat thundered beneath perfectly unbroken skin. On the table beside her bed lay a cream-colored envelope sealed with silver wax. Ira stared at it until the room seemed to tilt. She knew that seal. With trembling fingers, she opened the invitation. The Royal Moon Ball. 3 days from tonight. Ira slowly looked down at her wrist. Beneath her skin, something silver flickered once and disappeared. Memory returned with the cold clarity of a blade, Velric's suspicion, Morgana's quiet smile, the locked door, and the secret she had carried into death rather than surrender. This time, Ira would not beg the Alpha King to believe her. She would fool him again. And before anyone realized what she was hiding, she would be gone. For the next 3 days, Ira treated every hour as borrowed time. In her first life, she had spent those days worrying whether her plain dress was suitable for the royal moon ball and wondering why an Omega with no family name had been summoned at all. Now she knew better. She remembered which corridor Morgana would cross before sunset, which servant would deliver the ceremonial ribbons, and exactly when the Moon Registry would be opened beneath the ballroom skylight. Memory gave her an advantage, but Ira refused to mistake knowledge for safety. The future had already killed her once. She gathered moonroot from the apothecary garden before dawn, choosing only enough to conceal the strange resonance in her blood without leaving its bitter scent too strong on her clothes. She grounded herself and stitched a small cloth packet inside the cuff of her pale sage dress. When moonlight touched her wrist, the silver beneath her skin stirred. Ira covered it immediately. Her mother had taught her that gesture when she was a child, long before Ira understood why. Never let the moon see what belongs beneath your skin. In her first life, those words had sounded like superstition. Now they sounded like a warning someone had died without explaining. Ira considered running before the ball. She even packed a small bag with bread, a wool cloak, and the few coins she owned. But the palace gates would record every departure, and an Omega fleeing immediately after receiving a royal summons would invite exactly the attention she needed to avoid. No. She would follow the old path until the moment it became safe to leave it. That evening, while carrying folded linens through the eastern gallery, Ira saw Morgana approaching. In her first life, Ira had stopped and bowed deeply. The priestess had touched her cheek and called her a nervous little thing. This time Ira stepped into an alcove before Morgana reached her. She held her breath as silver robes passed within several feet of her hiding place. Morgana stopped. Ira's pulse quickened. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then the priestess continued walking. Ira waited until the footsteps disappeared before moving. It was nothing, she told herself. A tiny difference. Yet when she glanced back, Morgana stood at the far end of the gallery, watching the empty space Ira had just left. On the night of the moon ball, the royal hall glittered exactly as Ira remembered. Silver chandeliers. White roses. Nobles dressed like living jewels beneath the open skylight. And above them all stood Velric. Seeing him alive stole the air from her lungs. Her mind remembered the man kneeling beside her at the end, but her body remembered the king who had ordered the door locked. She lowered her gaze before he could notice. One by one, guests passed before the Moon Registry. Names illuminated across its ancient silver surface as the temple attendants recorded bloodlines and resonances. Ira moved closer. 10 people ahead. 5. 2. Her wrist began to burn. She pressed her thumb against the moonroot hidden inside her cuff. The bitter fragrance rose softly around her. Ira. Her name sounded insignificant in the enormous hall. She stepped beneath the moonlight. Silver warmth raced beneath her skin, struck the veil of moonroot, and disappeared. The registry remained still. A temple attendant barely looked at her. Omega. No registered resonance. Relief came so sharply that Ira almost smiled. Exactly as before. She bowed and walked away. She had done it. Again. All she needed to do now was survive the evening, return to her room, and disappear before dawn. She was almost at the ballroom doors when a strange silence spread behind her. Ira stopped. She knew this was wrong. In her first life, music had continued. Velric had not approached her. Until days later. Slowly, against every instinct telling her to keep walking, she looked back. The Alpha King was standing at the top of the marble stairs. His attention was fixed entirely on her. One hand gripped the edge of his black armor as though something beneath it had suddenly hurt. His expression had changed from royal indifference to something Ira could not name. Valeric descended one step. Then another. Nobles moved aside without being told. Ira's heart began pounding. This had not happened before. Valeric stopped several feet from her, his dark eyes narrowing as though he were listening to a voice no one else could hear. Deep within him, his wolf had gone completely still. Then a single word entered his mind with such certainty that Valeric forgot the hundreds of people watching him. Luna. Ira saw the shock cross his face. She did not know what he had heard, but she knew the future had just changed. She turned toward the doors. Wait, Valeric said. Ira froze. His voice was calm, but the entire ballroom obeyed it. The Omega in the sage dress does not leave the palace. The command followed Ira across the ballroom like a door closing behind her. No guard touched her, yet she knew better than to take another step. In her first life, Valeric had barely noticed her during the moon ball. He had begun asking questions days later, after inconsistencies appeared in her registry. Tonight, he was already descending the marble stairs toward her. Every step shattered another piece of the future she had memorized. Ira turned slowly. Your Majesty. She lowered her head, careful not to expose her wrist. Valeric stopped several feet away. Up close, he looked exactly as memory had preserved him, black armor reflecting the chandeliers, crimson cloak trailing behind him, dark hair brushing the fur at his shoulders. But his expression was different. There was no suspicion yet. Only confusion sharpened by something almost instinctive. Look at me. Ira obeyed, and immediately regretted it. His eyes searched hers as if he expected to find an answer there. What did you use before approaching the registry? He asked. Her pulse jumped. Nothing forbidden. That was not my question. Around them, the ballroom had become painfully quiet. Ira could feel Morgana watching from beside the registry. She needed Valeric uninterested, not curious. Curiosity had been the first stone in the road that led to her death. Moon root, Ira admitted. Some Omegas use it when crowded rooms overwhelm their senses. It was a reasonable lie because most of it was true. Valeric glanced toward her covered wrist. And that is all? Yes. The word came too easily. His gaze hardened slightly. He knew. Not the truth, but the existence of the lie. Ira waited for him to summon guards. Instead, Valeric turned toward the court. Continue the ceremony. Music returned uncertainly. Conversations followed more slowly. Then he looked at Ira again. You will remain as my guest until the registry is reviewed. Guest. The word almost made her laugh. In her first life, another gentler word had eventually become prisoner. Am I free to refuse? She asked. Something flickered across his face. Yes. Hope rose. Then I refuse. For the first time, the Alpha King appeared genuinely surprised. Ira bowed. May I leave? Valeric should have let pride answer for him. Instead, he studied her for several long seconds before saying, You may leave this room. You may not leave the palace grounds until morning. It was more freedom than she expected and far less than she needed. Ira walked away before fear could betray her. She had nearly reached the eastern corridor when two attendants passed carrying ceremonial objects back toward the Moon Temple. Silver cloth. Registry candles. A narrow wooden case. Ira knew what lay inside before the lid shifted. Moonlight touched polished metal. Her body stopped obeying her. The ballroom disappeared. For one terrible instant there was only cold stone beneath her hands, Morgana's calm voice, and silver light descending through darkness. Ira stumbled backward. Her breath would not come. Take it away. The words escaped before she could stop them. The attendant stared. Then a hand steadied her elbow. Ira recoiled so violently that Valeric released her at once. He had followed without her noticing. His expression changed when he saw what had frightened her. The moon blade? Ira forced air into her lungs. I do not like ceremonial weapons. You looked as though you recognized it. I have seen one before. Another lie. Valeric stared at the blade. For the first time that evening, uncertainty entered his face. His hand moved to the center of his chest. Strange, he murmured. Ira watched him carefully. What is? He did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the silver metal. I have dreamed about that blade. Cold moved through Ira despite the warmth of the corridor. A dream? The same one more than once. His voice had become distant. A locked room. Someone crying. Blood on silver. Ira forgot how to breathe. Valeric looked at her again, and whatever he saw in her expression made him go still. He stepped closer, but stopped before entering the space she had instinctively created between them. Who are you? No one. That is the first thing tonight I know is untrue. Ira turned away. She had come here believing memory was her greatest weapon. Now she understood the danger she had never prepared for. Valeric was not supposed to remember anything. Perhaps he did not. Perhaps dreams were only dreams. But when she reached the end of the corridor, his voice followed her, quieter than any command he had given all evening. Why do you look at me as if I have already killed you? Valeric's question followed Ira long after she left the corridor. She did not answer it. She could not. By sunrise, she had convinced herself that his dreams meant nothing. The past belonged to her alone, and she intended to keep it that way. Yet when she reached the palace gates with her small traveling bag beneath her cloak, the guards did not stop her. Instead, one bowed and handed her a sealed order. By command of the king, Ira was free to leave the palace grounds whenever she wished. She read the sentence twice. In her first life, Valeric had answered uncertainty with control. Now he had given her the very freedom she had expected to fight for. It should have made leaving easier. Instead, it frightened her. Ira crossed the courtyard but stopped before the outer gate. If Valeric was changing his decisions, then her memories were no longer a map. She could predict what Morgana had done once. She could not predict what Morgana would do in a different future. Behind her, the palace bells announced the morning session of the Royal Council. Ira slowly turned back. She told herself she needed information before disappearing. Nothing more. In the Western Archive, Valeric stood over the Moon Registry with Chancellor Corvin beside him. Ira remained outside the half-open door, unseen. There is no error, Corvin said. The registry identified her as an ordinary Omega. My wolf disagrees. Wolves are instinct, Your Majesty. The registry is law. Valeric's expression cooled. Then law should survive being questioned. Ira felt something inside her shift, small and unwelcome. In her first life, he had trusted records over her voice. Now he was questioning those records before she had asked him to. She stepped backward before either man noticed her, only to find Morgana standing at the end of the hall. The priestess smiled. Leaving us so soon? Ira's hand tightened around her bag. I have permission. Of course. Morgana's gaze lowered briefly to Ira's covered wrist. Still, it is curious. The king has never challenged the Moon Registry over an Omega before. Ira heard the warning beneath the softness. Then perhaps he is merely curious. Kings cannot afford curiosity without consequence. Morgana walked past her. Ira did not move until the silver robes vanished into the archive. By afternoon, the consequence arrived. Whispers spread through the palace first, then beyond its gates. Servants fell silent when Ira approached. Nobles watched her as though she carried something contagious. By evening, Corvin summoned her to the council chamber. Valeric was already there. Morgana stood opposite him before a row of council elders. The accusation is simple, Corvin said reluctantly. Several witnesses claimed the king displayed mate recognition despite the registry recording none. Ira looked at Morgana. And that makes me guilty of what? Morgana answered gently. Witchcraft. The room seemed to narrow around Ira. This was wrong. The moon seal should have appeared 3 nights from now. The accusation of theft should have followed. She knew how to survive that path because she had already died walking it. But Morgana had abandoned it. Ira's changed choices had forced the priestess to make new ones. She concealed her scent with moon root, Morgana continued. Then His Majesty's wolf reacted to her. If the registry is correct, something else influenced him. Enough, Valeric said. Morgana turned. Your Majesty, tradition requires that she be surrendered to the Moon Temple for examination. Ira's blood went cold. A locked room. Silver robes. The moon blade. Her fingers trembled before she could stop them. Valeric noticed. For one terrible second, Ira expected history to close around her again. Then he stepped down from the dais and placed himself between her and Morgana. No, silence filled the chamber. Morgana's pleasant expression finally cracked. Your Majesty. You heard me. Valeric did not look at Ira. No one takes her anywhere. Corvin stiffened. The council will ask why. Then tell them their king wishes to know why an ancient law requires an innocent woman to prove she is innocent. Ira stared at his back. She had prepared herself for cruelty, suspicion, even imprisonment. She had not prepared for protection. Valeric finally turned toward her. You are still hiding something. The fragile warmth inside her vanished. And you still believe you are entitled to know it. His expression tightened, but he did not command her to speak. No, he said quietly. I believe I need to know whether it will destroy you. Ira hated the part of herself that heard sincerity in those words. You cannot protect me from something you do not understand. Then help me understand. I did that once. The answer escaped before she could catch it. Valeric went completely still. Ira realized her mistake and stepped back. Across the chamber, Morgana was watching them with new attention. Not anger. Recognition. Ira had changed the future, and now Morgana knew it. The priestess lowered her eyes, hiding whatever decision had just formed behind them. Ira understood too late that surviving the old trap had not made her safe. It had only forced her enemy to build a new one. By morning, the accusation had escaped the council chamber and spread through the palace like winter frost. Ira heard the whispers before she saw the people making them. Witch. False mate. The Omega who bewitched the king. None of those words had existed in her first life. She had changed one decision, Valeric had changed another, and now the future was becoming something neither memory nor fear could predict. Ira found him in the council hall shortly after sunrise. Corvin stood beside a long oak table covered with petitions bearing the seals of noble families and pack leaders. Morgana was absent, which somehow made her presence feel stronger. The Moon Temple is demanding custody, Corvin said. 3 council houses have joined them. If you refuse without cause, they will claim your judgment has been compromised. Valeric remained standing at the window, his black armor catching the gray morning light. And if I surrender her? Corvin hesitated. The immediate political pressure ends. Ira almost smiled at the familiarity of it. There it was. The same choice wearing different clothes. In her first life, evidence had been placed before Valeric, and he had chosen order. He had called imprisonment temporary. He had promised there would be a fair trial. Then Ira had died before fairness ever reached her. She forced herself to look at him now. Do it. Valeric turned. What? Give them what they want. Corvin stared at her, but Ira kept her eyes on the king. Your council keeps its confidence. The temple gets its examination. You keep your throne untouched by scandal. Veilric's expression darkened. And what happens to you? The memory of silver robes entering a locked chamber flashed through her mind. That has never been the part kings worry about. Corvin quietly looked away. Veilric crossed the room, stopping several feet from Ira. He did not reach for her. He seemed to understand now that sudden closeness made her retreat. You keep speaking to me as if I have already failed you. Ira said nothing. Perhaps I have, he continued. Perhaps there is something neither of us understands. But I will not make a decision because you expect the worst of me. He turned toward Corvin. Tell the council there will be no transfer. Corvin's face tightened. Your Majesty, that answer will have consequences. Then they will be mine. The temple can challenge your authority before the Pax. Let them. Ira felt the room tilt in a way no rebirth had prepared her for. This was the moment she remembered. The moment when power had mattered more than uncertainty. Yet Veilric had chosen differently. Not because she had proven herself innocent. Not because she had revealed her secret. He still knew she was lying to him. And he protected her anyway. Hope was more dangerous than fear. Ira had learned that in her first life. She would not confuse one different decision with redemption. Why? She asked. Veilric looked at her. Because evidence should lead to truth, not replace it. Before she could answer, the doors opened. A royal archivist hurried inside carrying a narrow ledger wrapped in faded cloth. Corvin frowned. What is this? The record His Majesty requested from the Western Archive. Veilric took the ledger and placed it on the table. Ira recognized nothing about it until he opened the cover and she saw the year written at the top. The year of her birth. Her wrist began to burn beneath her sleeve. Corvin examined the pages. These are registry entries for newborn wolves. Veilric turned several pages, then stopped. One line had been cut cleanly from the parchment. Not crossed out. Removed. Corvin leaned closer. That is impossible. Why? Ira whispered. Because registry records are sacred, Corvin said. No entry may be destroyed after certification. Veilric studied the missing strip. Then someone decided this name was dangerous enough to break sacred law. Ira's mother's warning returned with sudden clarity. Never let the moon see what belongs beneath your skin. She had always believed her mother had been teaching her to hide what she was. For the first time, Ira wondered whether someone else had hidden her first. Corvin compared the ledger with another volume. His expression slowly changed. Your Majesty. Veilric looked up. There are more. Corvin placed 3 records beside each other. Each contained a narrow absence in precisely the same position. Birth name. Blood classification. Moon designation. Removed deliberately across different years. This was larger than Ira. Veilric's gaze settled on her covered wrist. Someone did not simply falsify your records. His voice was quiet now. Someone erased you. A bell rang from the Moon Temple across the palace grounds. Once. Twice. Then a third time. Corvin went pale. The priestess has called an emergency assembly. Ira understood before anyone explained. Morgana knew they had found the ledger. The old trap had failed. The new one was already closing. And this time, Ira was beginning to realize the secret she had died protecting might never have belonged to her alone. The third bell had barely faded when the palace began to divide around Ira. By noon, representatives from 6 packs had entered the royal court, each carrying the same question disguised beneath different words. If the Moon Registry could be altered, whose bond could still be trusted? Morgana had moved faster than Ira expected. She did not accuse Ira of altering the records. She did something far more dangerous. She made everyone afraid that Ira's existence could make their own lives uncertain. 3 bonded couples reported instability after the moon ball, Morgana announced before the gathered council. 2 more claim their mate marks have weakened. These disturbances began only after this Omega concealed herself from the registry. Ira stood beside Corvin beneath the high stone arches, listening as fear became suspicion. She remembered none of this from her first life. There had been no frightened pack leaders, no public questions about mate bonds, no challenge to Valric's authority. Her attempt to escape the old future had created room for Morgana to build a different one. Valric sat upon the throne, silent until Morgana finished. You are claiming Ira damaged bonds merely by attending a ball? I am saying we do not know what she is. Then say that, Valric replied. Do not turn ignorance into evidence. A murmur moved through the chamber. Morgana's expression remained serene. Your Majesty continues to protect her while refusing the temple permission to examine her. People will draw their own conclusions. Ira looked toward the gathered nobles. Morgana was right. Some watched Ira with fear. Others watched Valric with doubt. The accusation had become larger than either of them. After the assembly, Corvin led Valric and Ira into the Western Archive and locked the door. Several old ledgers waited across the table. I compared every damaged registry page we found, he said. The missing entries span almost 40 years. Ira stared at him. 40? And they were removed before Morgana became Royal Moon Priestess. Valric's eyes narrowed. So this began before her. Corvin nodded. Whatever she is protecting, she inherited it. That realization settled heavily over Ira. Morgana had killed her in the first life, but Morgana had not created the secret. Someone had been erasing people long before Ira was born. Corvin opened another volume. Beside several missing entries appeared the same faded symbol, a crescent crossed by a thin silver line. Ira's wrist burned. She covered it instantly, but Valric saw. That symbol means something to you. I do not know. That is different from saying no. Ira almost denied it, then stopped. Her mother's warning returned again, but this time another memory followed it, a silver pendant hidden beneath her mother's dress, marked with the same broken crescent. Ira had been 6 years old when she asked about it. Her mother had closed her hand around the pendant and whispered that some truths survived only when no one spoke them aloud. My mother had that symbol, Ira admitted. Corvin looked sharply at her. Valric did not speak. He simply waited. The absence of pressure made the truth harder to resist. She taught me to hide my wrist from moonlight. She never explained why. Corvin turned several pages until he found a handwritten notation nearly erased by age. Silver veil. The words meant nothing to him. They meant almost nothing to Ira. Yet somewhere inside her, fear recognized them. Before anyone could read further, bells sounded again outside. Not 3 this time. 7. Corvin closed his eyes. A royal summons. They returned to the Great Hall to find Morgana waiting before representatives from every major pack in the kingdom. Behind her stood Moon Temple attendants carrying the ceremonial registry and the wooden case containing the moon blade. Ira's steps faltered. Valric noticed but did not touch her. What have you done? He asked Morgana. What you would not. She turned toward the assembly. The kingdom cannot survive while its people question whether their sacred bonds are real. Nor can the crown remain above suspicion while its king protects the woman at the center of that doubt. Morgana lifted a sealed decree. Under the oldest covenant between crown and temple, I invoke a public moon trial. The hall erupted into whispers. Ira heard only 2 words. Moon trial. In her first life, she had died before reaching hers. Morgana looked directly at her. At the next full moon, the registry will determine before the entire kingdom what Ira truly is. Valric stepped forward. I will not permit it. Then the packs may demand your removal for obstructing sacred law. Silence fell. Ira looked at Valric and finally understood Morgana's new trap. If Ira fled, the court would call her guilty and Valric's protection would become evidence against him. If Valric stopped the trial, he could lose the throne. Memory offered Ira only one lesson: run before the locked door closes. She had packed her bag. She still had permission to leave. For several seconds, freedom stood only a decision away. Then Ira looked at the king who had chosen differently when history gave him the chance. She could not promise to trust him. She could not promise to forgive a life he did not remember. But she would not let him lose a kingdom because he had finally refused to sacrifice her to protect it. "There is no need to remove your king," Ira said. Every face turned toward her. Velric's expression changed. "Ira." She met Morgana's gaze. "I will stay." Morgana smiled, but Ira no longer saw victory in it. Only fear carefully hidden beneath ceremony. And for the first time, Ira wondered whether the Moon trial was not dangerous because it could expose her, but because it might expose everyone who had spent generations making sure women like her disappeared. By the night of the full moon, Ira understood that agreeing to the trial had changed more than her own fate. The great hall was crowded with pack leaders, nobles, council elders, and witnesses from the Moon Temple, all gathered beneath the open skylight where cold silver light spilled across the marble floor. The same place that had once hidden her secret would now demand it. Ira entered wearing the pale sage dress she had worn to the ball. She had chosen it deliberately. No jewels. No noble crest. No borrowed symbols of importance. If the court judged her, they would judge the Omega they had dismissed as insignificant. Velric waited beside the throne in black armor and crimson, but he did not summon her to his side. He had promised her something before the doors opened. Tonight, every step would be hers to choose. Morgana stood beside the Moon Registry. The wooden case containing the moon blade rested before her. Ira's body remembered it before her mind could resist. Her breathing shortened. Cold stone flashed through her memory. A locked door. Velric arriving too late. She forced herself back into the present. There were no chains around her wrists. No locked chamber behind her. And this time, she had walked into the hall by choice. "Ira," Morgana announced, "you stand accused of concealing your nature from the Moon Registry and interfering with sacred mate recognition." Murmurs moved through the audience. "Do you deny using Moonroot?" "No." "Do you deny hiding something from your king?" Ira looked toward Velric. "No." The murmurs grew louder. Morgana smiled faintly. "Then perhaps this need not take long." She presented temple records claiming disturbances in mate marks had begun after Ira entered the moon ball. Corvin challenged the dates, but fear cared little for careful accounting. One pack leader demanded that Ira submit immediately. Another demanded Velric explain why an unknown Omega mattered more than generations of law. Finally Morgana turned toward the throne. "The choice belongs to the crown. Surrender her to the temple. And the sacred order remains intact." Ira went still. Here it was again. Different room. Different accusation. Same choice. Her heart knew what came next because it had already lived through the answer once. Velric rose. For a moment, the entire kingdom seemed to wait with her. Then he removed the royal mantle from his shoulders and placed it across the throne. "No," Morgana's face tightened. "Your Majesty, consider what you are risking." "I have." "The Pax may interpret refusal as proof that your judgment has been compromised." Velric descended the steps. "Then they may judge me after we have judged the evidence." "You would endanger your crown for one Omega?" Velric stopped beside Ira, not in front of her. Beside her. "I would endanger it before I use it to condemn someone simply because powerful people are frightened of questions." Silence fell so completely that Ira could hear her own heartbeat. In another life, she had begged this man to believe her. Now he had chosen before she begged. Something inside her broke open, but it was not forgiveness. It was the certainty that had kept her alive since waking again, the belief that people could never become more than their worst decision. Velric had become something else. That did not erase what had happened. It only meant the future was no longer required to repeat it. Morgana's composure finally cracked. Then the trial proceeds without royal protection. It proceeds, Ira said. Valeric turned sharply toward her. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. She looked at the pack leaders, then at the frightened couples whose bonds had become weapons in someone else's argument. Because if I leave now, she will use my silence as proof. And people will spend another generation afraid to question what they are told about their own lives. Morgana opened the wooden case. Moonlight touched the ceremonial blade. Ira's knees almost weakened. Valeric noticed. Ira. His voice was low. We can stop. She looked at him. Once, she had waited for him to save her. Once, she had waited for him to believe her. She would do neither now. No, she whispered. This time, I decide. Morgana placed the moon blade beside the registry. Then kneel before the temple. Ira stared at the stone floor. She remembered herself there in another life, frightened and pleading for someone else to determine whether she deserved mercy. Slowly, she raised her chin. I will stand. A ripple moved through the hall. Morgana's eyes hardened. The ritual requires submission. Truth does not. Ira stepped beneath the open skylight. Moonlight touched her face, then traveled down her arm. Heat awakened beneath her sleeve. The hidden mark burned brighter than it ever had before. Across the hall, several mate marks began to glow in answer. Gasps broke through the silence. Morgana went pale. For the first time, Ira saw unmistakable fear in the priestess's eyes. That was when Ira understood. Morgana had never truly been afraid that the trial would condemn her. She was afraid it would work. Ira reached toward the moon blade. Valeric did not stop her. No one did. Her fingers hovered above the silver surface as the mark beneath her wrist blazed through the fabric of her sleeve. She could still hide it. She could still protect the secret that had once been worth her life. But the woman who had died protecting it had believed silence was her only choice. The woman standing beneath the moon knew better. Ira pulled back her sleeve, revealing the first silver line of the mark to the entire kingdom. Morgana whispered one terrified name. Silver Veil. The word Silver Veil changed the room before anyone understood them. The Moon Registry answered first. A low silver glow moved across its surface, spreading beneath generations of names like light beneath ice. Ira stared as symbols appeared where blank spaces had been, including the narrow absence from the year of her birth. Corvin stepped closer, his face losing color. Those records were not destroyed, he said. They were concealed. Morgana moved toward the registry. Close the skylight. No one obeyed. Valeric's voice stopped the attendants before they could move. No one touches anything. Moonlight continued pouring into the hall. Ira's exposed mark brightened, and around the chamber other marks began responding. A noblewoman cried out as the gold crescent on her hand faded into a softer silver pattern. Across from her, the man recorded as her destined mate stared at his own unchanged mark. Then another bond shifted. Then another. Fear swept through the court. What is happening? Someone demanded. Morgana faced the crowd. An attack on sacred bonds. No, Corvin said. He was reading newly revealed writing beneath the registry entries. It is removing something. Morgana turned sharply toward him. Corvin looked at Valeric. There are 2 layers in these records. The original resonance and a second designation placed over it. Silence followed. Ira finally understood the secret her mother had never dared explain. Silver Veil did not create bonds. It revealed what had been hidden beneath them. The temple changed them, Ira whispered. Morgana's composure hardened. The temple preserved order. That answer condemned her more completely than denial could have. Voices rose throughout the hall. Pack leaders demanded explanations. Couples stared at marks they had trusted their entire lives. Valeric did not look away from Morgana. How long? Longer than your reign. Longer than mine. Morgana's voice remained calm, but fear had entered her eyes. Royal marriages prevented wars. Pack alliances protected thousands. The Moon Registry gave people certainty. By choosing for them, Ira said. Morgana looked at her. By protecting them from choices that could destroy kingdoms. Ira thought of her mother hiding a pendant beneath her dress. She thought of missing names scattered across 40 years of records. And people like me? Morgana said nothing. Corvin answered instead. They were erased because Silver Veil blood could expose the altered bonds. The truth struck Ira with unexpected grief. Her life had not been hidden because she was shameful. Her mother had not taught her to fear moonlight because something inside her was wrong. Someone had wanted her invisible because visibility itself was dangerous to their power. The moon blade suddenly gave a clear, bell-like tone beside the registry. Ira flinched. Silver light traveled from her wrist to the ceremonial metal. Velric pressed a hand to his chest. His face went still. Velric? Ira whispered. He did not answer. The hall vanished from his eyes. He saw another chamber beneath the palace. He saw Ira behind a locked door. He heard Morgana asking for the mark. He heard Ira refuse. Then came the moment that had haunted his dreams without a name, silver light, Ira collapsing, and himself arriving after his own order had placed her beyond his protection. Velric staggered one step. His wolf released a sound of grief so deep that several shifters in the hall lowered their heads instinctively. When his eyes found Ira again, there was recognition in them. Not complete memory of another life, but enough truth to understand the guilt his soul had carried into this one. It was you, he said quietly. Ira could not speak. The locked room. The blade. I sent you there. Morgana stepped backward. Your Majesty, whatever you are seeing is an illusion created by her blood. Velric looked at the registry, then at Corvin. Can the blade preserve blood memory? Corvin swallowed. According to the oldest temple records, yes. Velric's gaze returned to Morgana. Then show everyone. Morgana's face finally broke. You cannot. Ira understood why. The moon blade had not merely witnessed her death. It had witnessed Morgana. Ira placed her hand against the ceremonial metal. The memory unfolded in silver light above the registry, softened into shapes and voices rather than violence. The court saw Ira imprisoned. They heard Morgana demand the silver veil secret. They heard Ira refuse. They saw Velric arrive too late. And they heard Morgana say the words she had believed no one else would ever hear, your blood cannot be allowed beneath the moon. When the memory faded, no one spoke. Velric slowly removed the crown from his head. Then, before the Omega he had once failed, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. Gasps moved through the court. Ira stared down at him. In her first life, she would have given anything for this moment. For regret. For recognition. For proof that her death mattered to him. Now it felt different. Smaller than she had imagined, because she had finally learned that his remorse could not restore what she had lost. I chose the law over you, Velric said. I called it caution because I was afraid to call it what it was. I did not trust you. My decision gave your enemy the opportunity she needed. His voice roughened. I cannot ask you to forgive that. Ira felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she did not look away. Then do not. Velric bowed his head. I will not. He did not reach for her. He did not claim their bond. He did not ask destiny to excuse him. Tell me what happens now, he said. Ira looked around the hall at the altered registry, the frightened court, the exposed records, and Morgana standing without the certainty that had once made her untouchable. Then Ira looked at her own silver mark, shining openly beneath the moon. She had died protecting this truth because she believed silence was the only way to keep it safe. She had been reborn believing survival meant hiding it again. Both lives had taught her the same mistake. The secret had never needed another prison. It needed a choice. Ira lifted her chin. Now, she said, we give everyone back theirs. The truth did not repair the kingdom in a single night, but it changed who was allowed to decide what came next. By sunrise, the Moon Registry had been sealed under joint authority of the Crown and representatives from every pack. No priest or royal official could alter another bond until each concealed record had been examined. Morgana was removed from the Moon Temple and brought before the council, not for the fear she had inspired, but for the choices the blood memory and hidden records proved she had made. When questioned, she insisted she had inherited a system created generations before her. I preserved peace, she said. Ira stood beneath the same skylight where her silver veil had awakened. Peace that requires people to surrender their own lives is only silence with a prettier name. No one answered that. Corvin was the next to stand before the court. He did not pretend innocence simply because he had not known the entire truth. He admitted that he had defended the registry because tradition had made questioning it seem more dangerous than obedience. Then he placed every royal archive under independent review. Over the following weeks, names began returning to history. Some belonged to people long gone. Others belonged to families who had spent generations believing their ancestors had simply disappeared from sacred records. Ira found her own name among them. Ira, daughter of a silver veil woman whose identity had been deliberately concealed. For several minutes, she could only touch the restored line with trembling fingers. Her mother had not hidden her because she was ashamed of what Ira was. She had hidden her because she had known what powerful people would do if they understood. Ira cried then, quietly and without embarrassment, for the woman who had protected her with the only tools she possessed. Valeric never interrupted. That became the strangest part of the weeks that followed. He remained near enough to help when asked and distant enough to let Ira breathe. He did not speak of fate. He did not call her Luna. He did not use his wolf's recognition as a claim upon her future. When the council proposed declaring Ira the king's destined mate before the packs, Valeric rejected the motion before she even heard of it. Her blood exposed a system that stole choice, he told them. I will not honor that truth by stealing hers. Ira learned of those words from Corvin, and something inside her softened despite every effort to prevent it. Not because Valeric regretted the past. Regret was easy when the consequences were already known. What mattered was what he chose when no forgiveness had been promised. A month after the trial, another moon ball was held. This one was different. The registry remained present, but no declaration was treated as command. Bonds could be recognized, questioned, accepted, or refused. The temple could witness. It could no longer decide. Ira almost did not attend. Then she remembered the girl who had once crushed moonroot beneath her sleeve and prayed not to be seen. So she chose the same pale sage dress. No moonroot this time. No hidden packet inside her cuff. When she entered the ballroom, conversations quieted. Not because she was an accused Omega. Not because she belonged to the Alpha King. They knew her name now. Valeric stood beneath the chandeliers in black royal armor, his crimson cloak falling behind him. His gaze found her, but he did not approach until she crossed half the distance herself. You stayed, he said. Ira looked toward the open skylight. I almost did not. You were free not to. There was no disappointment in his voice. Only acceptance. That mattered more than he could know. Moonlight reached her wrist. The silver veil appeared openly, delicate and bright. Across from her, something answered beneath Valeric's skin. His wolf stirred, but the king remained still. The registry would call you my mate, he said. Ira met his eyes. And what do you call me? Valeric was silent for a moment. Ira. Her throat tightened. He understood. Before, everyone had wanted her secret, her blood, her bond, or what she represented. He gave her back the simplest thing first, herself. I cannot change what the man I was chose, he said. And I will not ask you to love me because another life says you should. Good. A faint sadness touched his expression. Ira stepped closer. Because if I choose you, Valeric, it will not be because your wolf recognized me. Hope appeared in his eyes, careful and almost afraid. If? She remembered the locked chamber. She remembered waking 3 days before the ball, certain that survival required escaping him. She remembered every choice afterward that had changed the road between them. Forgiveness had not erased the first life. It had simply stopped that life from owning the second. Ira held out her hand. Ask me. The most powerful alpha in the kingdom looked at her as though the answer mattered more than his crown. Will you stay with me? Ira let the question exist without prophecy, law, fear, or obligation. Then she placed her hand in his. Yes. Around them, the moon ball continued, but no announcement followed. No priest declared ownership. No registry told Ira what her future must be. Beneath the moon that had once exposed her, she stood completely visible and completely free. In her first life, Ira had died protecting a secret. In her second, she discovered something worth protecting more, the right to choose what happened after the truth was known.